Hello and welcome to the Environment This Week series section of Drishti IAS. I'm Aisha, and in today's episode we will be covering topics which are important from General Studies paper 3, that is Environment and Ecology, and which has happened or has taken place in the last 1 week. So the topics that we have shortlisted are Bunny grassland, psychoteritic syndrome, Metakurinji plant, horseshoe crab, or tarantula spider. So these were the topics which were mostly in the news from the respect of environment and ecology, and also important from your exam respect. So let us begin. First and foremost is the Bunny grassland. Now we have to talk about Bunny grassland. So first, the most basic point is, where is Bunny grassland located? So Bunny grassland is located in the state of Gujarat. So it is Asia's largest grassland. Important point to remember. It is Asia's largest grassland which is located near the run of Kutch. Now look at this map. This is the greater Kutch part in the Gujarat, and this is little run of Kutch, and this is the location of the Bunny grassland. So it is Asia's largest grassland located near the run of Kutch in Gujarat, and the area is around 2618 kilometers, and it is about 45% pasture area of Gujarat. So you can say about 50% of the Gujarat pasture area belongs to the Bunny grassland. Now about the ecosystem and vegetation. So there are two types of ecosystems which takes place within the Bunny grassland, and that is the wetland and the grasslands. So grasslands are the areas where the flora and the fauna we can basically see, and the animals, or you can say the herbivores and the carnivores. Basically the herbivores, they move from one place to another place, and they can also find their pasture there. Then it also has a wetland. So they both, wetland and grassland, they both are present together in Bunny grassland. And Bunny has less dense vegetation and is highly dependent on rainfall. As it is present in Gujarat, so you can say that the temperature remains high. So it is basically a semi-arid and arid conditions. Semi-arid and arid conditions. These grounds were traditionally managed following a system of rotational grazing. Earlier rotational grazing used to take place, but now things are changing, and the wetland and the grassland together are existing there. Now wetland, recently there were 3 more wetlands that has been included in India in the form of the Ramsar sites, and the total number of wetlands in India has reached to the mark of 85 wetlands. Then it is dominated by a low growing plant, that is forbs and graminoids. Low growing plants, it means not very large trees you can find. Majority of the time you can see the low growing plants. So low growing plants. Then many of which are also halophytes. Halophytes are salt tolerant. Now see, the region of Gujarat, or you can say the region in Gujarat and Rajasthan, they are semi-arid and arid. So basically the plants there are halophytes, that is salt tolerant. It is an important point to remember. And that are of cover of trees and bushes can also be seen there. Areas are rich in flora and fauna, as it is a grassland and a wetland also, so it will be very rich in flora and fauna. So around 192 species of plants, 262 species of birds, and species of mammals, reptiles and amphibians can be found there. Then it is home to around 22 ethnic groups. Then Kutch Desert Wildlife Sanctuary and Chari Dhand Conservation Reserve are also part of the Bunny grasslands. So the wildlife sanctuary, that is the Kutch Desert Wildlife Sanctuary, is also found within the Bunny grassland. Then now what are the threats to the grassland? So that is degradation due to deforestation, overgrazing, agriculture, urbanization and other natural and specifically man-made reasons. Now with the increase of urbanization, industrialization, more and more area is needed. So from where this extra area will come? So this extra area comes from the forest regions and the regions of wildlife sanctuary, national parks, biosphere reserves, grasslands, etc. Then deforestation is one of the most basic point because of which the green cover of the country or all over the globe is reducing. Then as much as 49% of grassland area worldwide are estimated to be experiencing degradation. That is very clearly an indication towards the reducing the reforestation and increasing the degradation and the deforestation. Then in India, grasslands accounts for approximately 8 lakh square kilometer or about 24% of the country's total land area. So 24% of the country's total land area in India is under the grasslands. In 1955, the court notified the grassland as a reserve forest also. So Banni grassland is a reserve forest also. And most of the livestock keepers in Banni grassland belong to the community Maldhari. This is also an important point to remember, that majority of the livestock keepers in Banni grassland belongs to which community? So it is the Maldhari community. So this was about the Banni grassland. Next comes the horseshoe crab. So it is a crab which looks like a horseshoe, and that is why the name has been given horseshoe crab. So the horseshoe crab belongs to the phylum Arthropoda, and it is also regarded as a marine living fossil. So living fossil it has been regarded as. Now 4 extant horseshoe crab species is basically present, and out of these 4, one of the species has been found, and it is usually found in shallow coastal waters on soft sandy or muddy bottoms. Now shallow coastal waters, it means it is found near the coast. It is not found in the deep waters, it is found in the shallow coastal waters. So they have a segmented body, segmented limbs, and thick chitinous cuticle, that is exoskeleton. So look at this picture. So it has a segmented body, and exoskeleton is also there, outside part which you are able to see. Then the lifespan is around 2200 years, and in India if we talk about, then the largest habitat is Orissa. So on the coast of many of the cities, or you can say the lakes, they give or they lay eggs, and they lay eggs, these horseshoe crab, they lay eggs in very large quantities, and they are also found in the shallow coastal waters. So they are able to lay eggs. Then about their conservation status, so the IUCN status is endangered. If you talk about the American horseshoe crab, then it is vulnerable, and all others are endangered. And under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it comes under the Schedule 4. It comes under Schedule 4. It means that highest level of conservation or highest level of protection is not given, but protection needs to be done. Then about their importance, so they existed since the time of the dinosaurs, so they are also very old, and are important ecosystem engineers and predators of small organisms. When we say ecosystem engineers, so it also has a role to play with regard to that their presence in a particular area also talks about or also tells about the health of the ecosystem. And they also indicate things in the very much and different variety of things in the ecosystem, like for example the pollution levels can be detected, the marine pollution levels can be detected, or what are the gases present in the atmosphere that can be detected. And they are also responsible for movement of the food chain and the food web in the region or in the ecosystem. Then International Horseshoe Crab Day is celebrated on 20th June. Then the ecological function is to lay millions of eggs on the beaches to feed shore birds, fishes, and other wildlife. So the eggs which are laid by the horseshoe crab, they also become food to many fishes, birds, and other wildlife fauna. Then large hard shell serves as a micro habitat for many other species such as sponges, crabs, mussels, and snail. So the exoskeleton which we talked about, that it consists of a chitinous exoskeleton, that exoskeleton serves as a micro habitat for many small other organisms. Then They are critical link to world health, biodiversity and hold cultural importance across the globe because they are found in many places and in almost all the continent except the Antarctic. Next comes the phytoteritic syndrome. Phytoteritic syndrome. So let us talk about. So the phytoteritic syndrome or the phytoteritic syndrome, it is an umbrella term. So it is an umbrella term that holds the developing vocabulary about mental states relating to the ecological health of our planet. Becomes little technical to understand. So let me tell you in very easy words. So like for example, whatever is happening around you in the on the planet with regard to the ecosystem, biodiversity. So if anything wrong is taking place, like for example, somewhere earthquake came, some volcano came, some tsunami came, or anything which is causing you mental stress with regard to what is happening around you in your ecosystem. So that mental stress which is associated with the environment, something wrong happening in the environment, that mental stress which causes with regard to something wrong happening in the environment is what is called psychoteritic syndrome. So that is a syndrome. So it is a mental state, relating to the ecological health of our planet. Like for example, if recently you have heard about the Wayanad landslide and so many people losing their life. So when you hear these kind of news, you somewhere feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel despair. So that feeling which you are getting because of something happening on the planet with regard to the biodiversity or the ecosystem, then that feeling or that mental stress is what is called psychoteritic syndrome. And psychoteritic syndrome, within it also contain many different terms, and one of them is the eco-anxiety. Eco-anxiety is the most common of the syndromes, and that is with regard to the anything which is happening wrong in the ecosystem, and to look at that wrong a person feels anxious. So that is eco-anxiety. Everything is related to the environment and something wrong happening in the environment. And there are other prominent examples also. Apart from the eco-anxiety, there is also a term called climate grief, eco-guilt, climate trauma, eco-shame, climate anger. And they do not impact all of us in the same way. So like for example, the people who are more associated with the biodiversity or the ecosystem, they will feel it in the intensity with which they will feel the sadness or the despair will be more as compared to other people. And the migrant population, indigenous people, farmer, refugees and women are more vulnerable to these changes which is taking place in the environment as compared to others. Then young people across the world, especially in the age group of 15 to 30 years, they are also greatly impacted by the psychoteritic syndrome. Then there is another term called climate grief or solastalgia. Climate grief or solastalgia. So it is an acute sense of loss, despair and sadness that an individual experiences with regard to the ecosystem or the environment. The term came in the year 2007, but it entered into the people eye in the year 2018 when the climate activist Greta Thunberg publicly addressed her own struggles with this phenomena. She was also facing despair and sadness because things were not taking place in a right manner with regard to the environment or the ecosystem. Then, like for example, if the Great Barrier Reef in Australia will be getting harmed by the human activities, and Great Barrier Reef is one of the major tourist attraction of Australia. So if imagine about the mental state or the mental stress with the people of the Australia will be going through if the Great Barrier Reef will be getting harmed. or will be disappearing, or the percentage that it covers in Australia becomes less. So that is a example. Then next term comes the eco guilt. Now it is when we feel we are not able to make the kind of environmental friendly choices that we wish to make. We feel that because of our choices we are causing harm to the environment, but still we have to do this. Like for example, traveling from one place to another place from our own vehicle, like for four-wheeler, it causes pollution. So if someone who is an environmentalist or someone who looks into the respect of environment and thinks about the environment, then that person might feel guilty that he is doing something or the other which is causing harm to the environment, or he or she is contributing in the increasing the pollution levels. Then there is another term called eco shame, when we believe that an act of ours that may harm the environment consciously and willfully. Eco shame means that when we are aware about we are doing something which we should not do, and what we are doing willfully is contributing in a negative sense to the environment. Now comes the next point, and that is the Metakurinji flower. Now you people must have heard the term Neelakurinji. Neelakurinji is a term which many of the people must have heard, but Metakurinji is a term which is not basically remains in news. Now Neelakurinji is a flower which is endemic to Kerala or the Western Ghat, and Metakurinji is also one of the species of the same genre. So this is how it looks like, very beautiful when it blossoms. So the scientific name of Metakurinji is Strobilanthes sessilis. Strobilanthes sessilis, and it is as significant and distinctive as the Neelakurinji, leaving both local residents and tourists awestruck. So it looks very beautiful when it is at its full blossom. Then it is endemic to Western Ghat, and if one state we talk about, then that can be Kerala. It belongs to the Acanthaceae family, and around 450 species native to wet tropical biomes of Asia and Madagascar. So it is not that it only takes place in India, it takes place in other continents also. In India, it is a hotspot for the highest diversity of Strobilanthes, accommodating over 160 species, of which 72 are endemic to Sahyadris. When we say Sahyadris, it means the Western Ghats. Then their enchanting compact flowers in different colors of purple, lavender and blue offers explicit view to the tourist. So it does not blossom in only one single color, different colors are also present. Then it is extremely delicate flowers, extremely delicate, and it can be withered by a heavy downpour. Now what is the difference between Neelakurinji and Metakurinji? So Neelakurinji basically blossoms once in 14 years, while Metakurinji blossoms once in 7 years. And if we talk about Metakurinji, then it is at an elevation of around 800 meters above the sea level, while Neelakurinji blossoms at around 1000 meters above the sea level, or at an elevation of 1000 meters. Now with regard to the conservation of Metakurinji, so conservation of Neelakurinji has received attention, but Metakurinji has not received equal recognition despite its ecological importance. Sometimes it happens that one of the genre of a species becomes popular, even though the second or the other species are also that important for the environment, but that does not receive the same attention. Then enhanced research and conservation efforts are needed to conserve these rare species and update biodiversity assessment protocols, because if conservation will not be done, then a time will come in the coming times when the area with which they cover and the area in which they blossom will slowly and gradually starts to shrink. Now comes the next topic, and that is tarantula spider. So it is a new type of spider that has been found in US. So it has been found in the southeastern Arizona. So southeastern Arizona is a district which lies in US in the southeastern region. So the discovery of a new species of tarantula spider, and the name is Aphonopelma jacobi. And if we talk about the tarantulas, so within tarantulas there are different subspecies. So one of the subspecies within the tarantulas have been found, and the name is Aphonopelma jacobi. So if we talk about the tarantulas, so it is a type of large hairy spider belonging to the family Therapodidae, and there are over 900 species of tarantulas which is found all over the world except for Antarctica. They move slowly on their 8 hairy legs, but they are accomplished nocturnal predators. Nocturnal predators means they can see in night, so their night vision is good. Then the adult tarantulas average 5 inches. So they are basically the height, you can say it is around 5 inches or around 13 centimeters. And when they spread out, their leg span is up to 11 inches or 28 centimeters. This is how it looks like. So these were the 5 news that we covered, and they were tarantula spider, then it was Metacoringi flower, then before this it was psychoteretic syndrome, then horseshoe crab, then comes the bunny grassland. So these are the 5 topics. Now let us come to the practice questions of every topic, and you people will give me the answer of these practice questions. There will be 5 questions, so like it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and answer of every question. So in this format you can give me the answer in the comment section. First question is, which among the following is the distinctive feature of bunny grassland? Throughout the year rainfall, cold climatic conditions, arid and semi-arid conditions, or tall mountains. Second, the horseshoe crab is found in deep ocean, shallow waters, freshwater lake or desert. We have discussed this in the videos. Third, which of the following is included in psychoteretic syndrome? Eco-anxiety, eco-guilt, climate grief, or all of the above. Next, the Metacoringi flower is endemic to Western Ghat, Eastern Ghat, Himalayan ranges or Peninsular Plateau. Next, and the last one, that is the 5th one, where has a new species of tarantula spider, Aphonopelma jacobi, been discovered recently? That is UK, Canada, US or Brazil. So these were the 5 practice questions, and you people will give me the answer in the comment section. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time, keep reading, keep writing and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.